The moment Vanessa Harrington's laugh echoed across the factory floor, she sealed her company's fate. She didn't know it yet, couldn't have known, that the man standing before her in worn jeans and oil-stained work boots was about to dismantle everything she'd built. Not with anger, not with violence, but with something far more devastating, competence she'd been too blind to recognize. In 2 hours, he would save her billion-dollar contract. In 14 months, he would destroy her empire. But right now, in this exact moment, all she saw was a small-town mechanic who didn't belong in her world. Before we dive into this story, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let me tell you about the day everything changed. The October morning came in cold and mean. The kind of cold that gets into your bones and reminds you winter's coming whether you're ready or not. Liam Carter felt it through the cracked window seal of his pickup truck, a 2008 Ford F-150 with 186,000 miles on it and a passenger door that only opened from the inside. The heater worked maybe 60% of the time. Today wasn't one of those days. He didn't mind. He'd driven in worse. The factory rose up ahead like something out of a different century, all concrete and steel and windows that caught the weak morning sun. Harrington Industries. The name was stamped across the building in letters 3 feet tall, the kind of letters that said we're important without having to speak a word. Liam had seen the name before, probably 100 times, on shipments that came through the industrial district where his shop sat wedged between a closed tire warehouse and a Vietnamese restaurant that made the best banh mi he'd ever tasted. He pulled into the visitor lot, not the contractor entrance where he probably should have gone, because nobody had told him which to use. The email had just said urgent repair needed and given him an address and a time. 7 a.m. sharp. It was 6:52. Liam was always early. His daughter Sophie had asked him once why he showed up everywhere before he needed to, and he'd told her the truth, because being late meant making someone else wait, and their time mattered just as much as his. The security guard at the front entrance looked at him like he'd tracked mud across a white carpet. "Help you?" The guard's name tag said Rodriguez. He had the build of someone who used to play football and the expression of someone who'd stopped finding joy in much of anything. "I'm here for a repair call. Emergency maintenance." Liam pulled out his phone, showed him the email. Rodriguez squinted at it. "They called you." It wasn't quite an insult, but it wasn't quite not one either. Liam had gotten used to that tone. He was 32 but looked younger, kept his hair a little too long because he forgot to get it cut. And yeah, his work jacket had seen better days. The company name stitched across the back, Carter Repair and Machining, was starting to fray at the edges. "Guess so," Liam said. Seeing Liam, Rodriguez made a phone call, spoke too quietly for Liam to hear, then hung up and jerked his thumb toward the main building. "Third floor. Someone'll meet you." The lobby was the kind of space designed to make you feel small. Marble floors, leather furniture, a reception desk that probably cost more than Liam's truck. A woman in a suit that fit too perfectly to be off the rack glanced up at him, then quickly away, like looking too long might be contagious. He took the stairs instead of the elevator. 3 floors wasn't much, and the stairwell was empty and quiet, which meant he had a minute to think. Emergency repair at a place like this usually meant one of 3 things: electrical failure, mechanical breakdown, or automation malfunction. Given what he knew about Harrington Industries, they manufactured precision components for defense contractors and aerospace companies. It was probably automation. Those systems were delicate, temperamental. Most repair guys didn't know how to talk to them. Liam did. The 3rd floor opened into a hallway that smelled like coffee and stress. A young guy in his 20s, wearing a shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a tie loosened like he'd been wearing it for 16 hours straight, nearly ran into him. "You the repair guy?" Liam Carter, thank God. "Come on." The kid, his badge said Martin Chen, systems analyst, started walking fast enough that Liam had to lengthen his stride to keep up. "We've been down for 6 hours. 6 hours. We've got engineers from Boston on site. We've got our entire tech team pulling their hair out, and nobody can figure out what the hell's wrong." They passed offices with glass walls where people in expensive clothes sat having meetings that looked important. More than one person looked up as Liam walked by, and he caught the same expression he'd seen on Rodriguez's face. "The 'are you sure he's supposed to be here' look?" "What's the failure?" Liam asked. Production line 3, total shutdown. The automation sequence just stopped. Everything we've tried just makes it worse. Martin pushed through a set of double doors into what had to be the factory floor, and the noise hit like a wall. Machinery running, people shouting, the electric hum of systems under strain. But one section was silent, dead. Production line 3 sat dark and still, while engineers in clean room suits crowded around it like surgeons around a patient who'd stopped breathing. Computer screens showed cascading error messages. Someone had brought in diagnostic equipment that Liam recognized. Expensive stuff, the kind that cost 6 figures and came with a specialist to operate it. And standing in the center of it all, watching the chaos with an expression that managed to be both concerned and detached, was her. Liam knew who she was before anyone said her name. Vanessa Harrington. He'd seen her picture in business magazines, on news websites, in that one Forbes article about youngest billionaire CEOs that had made the rounds last year. She was 30, maybe 31. The photos didn't quite capture how she carried herself, like someone who'd never been told no in a way that stuck. She turned when Martin approached, and her eyes went past him first, to Liam, then away, then back again. "This is the repair contractor," Martin said. Liam Carter. Vanessa's expression didn't change much, but something flickered in it. Doubt, maybe. Or surprise that this was what $75 an hour bought you. "Mr. Carter." She had the kind of voice that came from expensive schools and elocution lessons, smooth and controlled. "I appreciate you coming on short notice." "Not a problem." She glanced at his toolbox, a battered red Craftsman roller cabinet that had belonged to his dad, and then at the engineers huddled around the production line. "I should tell you, we've already had 4 specialists attempt to diagnose the issue. Our in-house team has been working since midnight." It wasn't quite what makes you think you can fix what they couldn't, but it was close. "Okay," Liam said. One of the engineers, a guy in his 50s with gray hair and a Boston accent, looked over. "Vanessa, with all due respect, I don't think—" "Let him look," she said, not unkindly, but firm. Then to Liam, "The contract we're trying to fulfill is worth $1.2 billion. If we don't deliver components by Friday, we lose it." She paused. "I'm not trying to pressure you. I just want you to understand the stakes." Liam nodded. He set down his toolbox and walked toward the production line, aware that everyone was watching him now. He could feel their skepticism like heat on his back. The line itself was beautiful in the way that complex machinery could be, all precision and purpose, designed to manufacture aerospace-grade titanium components with tolerances measured in microns. But it was also broken in a way that wasn't immediately obvious. The error messages on the screens were symptoms, not causes. Most technicians would chase those symptoms for hours and get nowhere. Liam didn't look at the screens. He looked at the physical components, the servo motors, the pneumatic actuators, the sensor arrays. He ran his hand along the main control housing, feeling for heat distribution, for vibrations that shouldn't be there. Someone had replaced a circuit board recently. He could see the screws were newer than the others, the metal not yet oxidized. "Who did the last maintenance?" he asked. Martin checked his tablet. "We had a scheduled service 2 weeks ago. Standard protocol. They replace anything?" Martin scrolled. "Yeah, controller board on the primary sequencer." Liam knelt down, opened the access panel. The board was there, installed correctly, all the connections secure. But something about it wasn't right. He pulled out his phone, opened a technical specifications database he kept bookmarked, and looked up the model number. "This is a revision 3 board," he said. "So? Your system was designed for revision 2. The pin configuration is different. Whoever installed this didn't check compatibility. They just saw that the model number was close enough and figured it would work." The engineer from Boston came over, frowning. "That can't be right. I checked the board myself. It's within spec." "It's within spec for newer systems," Liam said. "But this production line was built in 2019. The firmware expects different voltage signals on pins 7 and 12. With the Rev 3 board, those signals are offset by 0.3 milliseconds. Not enough to trigger an error immediately, but enough to desynchronize the entire automation sequence after a few thousand cycles." Silence. "You're saying the solution is to swap back to an older board?" Vanessa asked. "That, and recalibrate the timing sequence to account for any drift that happened while this one was installed. Liam stood up, pulled a rag from his pocket to wipe grease off his hands. You probably don't have a Rev 2 board on site, but I can override the firmware to compensate for the Rev 3 until you source a replacement. The Boston engineer looked like he'd bitten into something sour. That would require reprogramming the entire control schema. Yeah, that's not a simple fix. Didn't say it was. Liam opened his toolbox, pulled out a laptop that looked like it had survived a small war. But it'll work. Vanessa exchanged a look with the engineer, then with Martin, then back to Liam. How long? 2 hours? Maybe 3. Our team has been trying for 6. I'm not your team, Liam said. Not rudely, just factually. You want me to do this or not? Another pause. Longer this time. Liam could see her calculating, weighing the risk of letting some nobody from a small repair shop touch a system that her expensive engineers couldn't fix. He'd seen that calculation before. Usually people decided against him, but Vanessa Harrington hadn't built a billion-dollar company by playing it safe. Do it, she said. Liam connected his laptop to the control system and got to work. The engineers watched for a while, making small comments to each other that they probably thought he couldn't hear. Who is this guy? Where did we even find him? This isn't going to work. Eventually, most of them drifted away, back to whatever else they were supposed to be doing. The Boston engineer stayed longer, watching over Liam's shoulder like a suspicious parent, but even he gave up after 45 minutes when it became clear Liam knew exactly what he was doing. Vanessa stayed. She didn't hover, didn't ask questions every 5 minutes, but she didn't leave either. She stood 20 feet away, taking calls, checking her tablet, occasionally glancing over to see his progress. At one point, her assistant brought her coffee in a cup that probably cost $8, and she drank it while reading something that made her frown. Liam worked through the control schema methodically, adjusting timing parameters, compensating for the board revision mismatch, testing each change in simulation before implementing it. The code was elegant, actually. Whoever had originally programmed this system knew their stuff. But elegant code could still break when you changed the hardware it was running on. 2 hours and 17 minutes after he'd started, Liam initiated the restart sequence. The production line hummed to life. Monitors that had shown nothing but error messages began displaying normal operational parameters. Servo motors engaged, conveyor belts moved. The whole system synchronized like an orchestra finding its rhythm after a missed beat. Someone across the factory floor shouted, "We're back online!" The Boston engineer came running, stared at the screens like they were showing him lottery numbers he'd just won. How the hell Rev 3 board incompatibility, Liam said, disconnecting his laptop. Like I said. Vanessa walked over, and for the first time since Liam had arrived, she smiled. It wasn't a big smile, nothing excessive, but it reached her eyes. Mr. Carter, I have to say, I'm impressed. Just doing what you called me for. Still. She glanced at Martin. Make sure Mr. Carter is compensated appropriately. Add a premium for the emergency response. Martin nodded, already typing on his tablet. That's when it happened. One of the executives, a guy in his 40s wearing a suit that probably cost 3 months of Liam's rent, came over with a smirk that Liam had seen before. I'm about to say something I think is funny, but really isn't smirk. So where'd we dig you up from? The executive asked. Rent-A-Wrench? A couple other executives who'd gathered to see the line restart laughed. Not mean laughter exactly, but not kind either. The kind of laughter that came from people who thought they were better than you and didn't mind if you knew it. Vanessa's smile faded. Richard? No, seriously, Richard continued. We've got engineers from MIT on payroll and some guy from... He glanced at Liam's jacket, at the frayed company name. Carter Repair and Machining saves the day? That's hilarious. More laughter. Martin looked uncomfortable. The Boston engineer suddenly found something very interesting to look at on the ceiling. Liam started packing up his tools. Slowly, methodically, the way he did everything. Screwdriver in its slot, laptop in its case, power cables wrapped properly so they wouldn't tangle. I mean, what do you normally fix? Richard was on a roll now, playing to his audience. Washing machines? Garage doors? Mostly industrial automation systems, Liam said quietly. Some aerospace components. Did some work for defense contractors a while back. Defense contractors? Richard said it like Liam had claimed to be an astronaut. Right. And I'm sure they were lining up for a guy from... He looked at Liam's truck through the window, at the dented tailgate and the rust spots. Yeah, that makes sense. Liam closed his toolbox, locked the latches. He looked at Vanessa, not at Richard. Invoice will be emailed by end of day. Mr. Carter, please don't... Vanessa started, but Liam was already walking toward the exit. Thank you for the opportunity, he said. Polite. Professional. Giving them nothing they could point to and call rude. He made it to the stairwell before he heard footsteps behind him. Wait! Vanessa's voice echoed in the concrete space. Please! Liam stopped, but didn't turn around. I apologize for Richard. He's... She paused, searching for words. He was out of line. People like Richard are usually out of line. Liam looked back at her. Doesn't mean they're wrong. He is wrong. You just saved us from a catastrophic failure. You solved in 2 hours what our entire engineering team couldn't solve in 6. Yeah, for $75 an hour. Liam smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Must be embarrassing. Vanessa's expression tightened. That's not. I run a small shop at the edge of the city. My truck's got 186,000 miles on it. I wear work boots that cost $40 and a jacket my dad left me when he died. Liam spoke calmly, but each word landed with weight. Your executives see that, and they see someone who doesn't matter. Someone who fixes washing machines and garage doors. And maybe they're right about what I look like, but they're wrong about what I can do. I don't think that, Vanessa said. You laughed. She blinked. What? When I first walked in, you looked at me and you laughed. Quiet, but I heard it. Liam shifted his toolbox to his other hand. It's fine. People do that. I'm used to it. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it. She had laughed, not at him exactly, but at the situation, at the contrast between what she'd expected and what had shown up. But Liam was right. She had laughed. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it. Liam nodded. Invoice by end of day, he said again, and continued down the stairs. He didn't look back. The drive home took 40 minutes through morning traffic that had already started to congeal into the usual gridlock. Liam listened to a podcast about sustainable manufacturing and thought about nothing in particular. Or tried to. But Richard's voice kept playing in his head. Where'd we dig you up from? Rent-A-Wrench? And the laughter. Always the laughter. His shop sat on a street that had seen better days 20 years ago and had been declining ever since. Half the buildings were empty. The tire warehouse next door had a for lease sign that had been up so long the sun had bleached it white. But the Vietnamese restaurant was open, and Mrs. Nguyen waved at him as he pulled in. He waved back. Inside, the shop smelled like oil and metal, and the specific kind of dust that only accumulated in places where real work happened. He had 3 repair jobs waiting, a hydraulic press from a fabrication shop, an industrial mixer that kept overheating, and a CNC machine with a calibration problem. Good work. Honest work. The kind of work that paid bills and let him pick up his daughter from school at 3:15 every day. Liam made coffee in the ancient Mr. Coffee machine that had probably been made when Reagan was president, sat down at his desk, and opened his laptop. The invoice for Harrington Industries took 5 minutes to complete. 2 hours of diagnostic work, 3 hours of programming and implementation, emergency service premium. He charged them exactly what he'd charge anyone else, even though he could have added a 0 to the end and they probably would have paid it. He sent the invoice, closed the laptop, drank his coffee. Then he opened a different file, one he hadn't looked at in almost 2 years. The file was titled Westbrook Analysis Confidential, and it was 73 pages of engineering assessment, financial projection, and strategic planning. He'd written it in 2022, back when he'd still believed that good ideas and solid data mattered to people like Vanessa Harrington. Westbrook had been one of Harrington Industries' manufacturing facilities, a massive complex on the west side of the city that had employed 400 people and produced some of the most precise industrial components in the Northeast. But when profit margins had tightened and shareholders had demanded cuts, Vanessa's executive team had decided Westbrook was expendable. Too old. Too expensive to maintain. Better to shut it down and consolidate production at newer facilities. Liam had seen the closure announcement and had known immediately that it was the wrong decision. He'd spent 6 months analyzing Westbrook. Nights and weekends, while Sophie slept in the small apartment above the shop, he'd built a comprehensive plan showing how the facility could be transformed into one of the most advanced manufacturing plants in the country. The equipment was outdated but solid. The location was ideal. The workforce was experienced. With the right investment and the right automation technology Liam knew how to build, because he'd spent 7 years designing exactly that kind of system before Sophie was born. Westbrook could outperform every other Harrington facility. He'd submitted the report through proper channels, had even gotten a meeting with some mid-level operations manager who'd nodded politely and promised to pass it along to the decision makers. 3 months later, Westbrook closed. 400 people lost their jobs. The building sat empty. Liam had told himself it didn't matter. He had his own life to worry about, his own daughter to raise. What Harrington Industries did with their facilities wasn't his problem, but he'd never deleted the file. Now he read through it again, seeing all the opportunities that had been wasted, all the potential that had been thrown away because executives like Richard couldn't see past their quarterly earnings reports. He read for an hour. Then he picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in 18 months. Marcus Hale. It's Liam. Silence. Then, well, damn, thought you'd forgotten about me. Marcus Hale had been Liam's business partner back in the before times, before Sophie, before everything had changed. They'd started a small automation consulting firm together, right out of college, and had built it into something real, something that mattered. But when Liam's wife Emily had gotten sick, when the medical bills had started piling up and the hospital visits had become daily instead of weekly, Liam had walked away from the company to take care of his family. Marcus had understood, had bought out Liam's share for a fair price, no pressure, no guilt, had stayed in touch at first, then less, then hardly at all, not because the friendship had died, but because Liam had needed space and Marcus had respected that. Been busy, Liam said. I saw. Got a Google alert for your shop. You did some work at Harrington Industries this morning? News travels fast. It does when you make the whole executive team look like idiots. Marcus laughed. I heard about it from 3 different people already. The mechanic who walked in and fixed what the MIT engineers couldn't. I'm not a mechanic. I know what you are, man. Question is, do you? Liam looked at the Westbrook file on his screen. You still in the investment game? That's what I do. Why? How much capital could you raise for an industrial manufacturing startup? Another pause, longer this time. How much are we talking? Enough to buy a closed factory and retrofit it with advanced automation systems. Liam, what? You remember Westbrook? Harrington's old facility? Yeah. Place is a ghost town now. It's also sitting empty and probably available for a fraction of what it's actually worth. Liam pulled up a real estate listing he'd bookmarked months ago. I want to buy it. Marcus went quiet. Liam could almost hear him thinking, calculating, running numbers. You're serious? Completely. This about what happened this morning. Because if you're trying to prove something, but I'm trying to build something, Liam said. Something that matters, something that'll create jobs and produce work that actually means something. He paused. And yeah, maybe I want to prove that Richard and people like him are wrong about what a guy from a small repair shop can do. Marcus laughed again, but this time it sounded different, excited. When can we meet? Tonight, after I pick up Sophie from school. I'll clear my schedule. They hung up. Liam sat in the quiet shop, surrounded by repair jobs and old machinery and the smell of honest work, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not revenge. That wasn't what this was. It was purpose. His phone buzzed, a text from Sophie's school. Parent-teacher conference next week? Please confirm availability. He confirmed, sent a reply, and checked the time. Still 3 hours before pickup. Enough time to finish the hydraulic press repair and maybe start on the mixer. Liam stood, stretched, and got back to work. Because that's what he did. That's what he'd always done. He fixed things. And starting tonight, he was going to fix something a lot bigger than a production line. Sophie was waiting by the chain-link fence when Liam pulled up to Jefferson Elementary at 3:17. 2 minutes late, which meant she'd been standing there worrying he'd forgotten. She did that sometimes, worried about things that hadn't happened yet, couldn't let go of the fear that people she loved might disappear. Her therapist said it was normal for a kid who'd lost her mom at 3 years old. Liam said it broke his heart every single time. Sorry, kiddo. Traffic on Harrison was backed up. She climbed into the truck, clutching her backpack and the stuffed rabbit she still carried everywhere, despite being way too old for it. It's okay. Mrs. Patterson let me help clean the erasers. Yeah? That exciting? Not really, but she gave me a granola bar. They drove home through streets that got progressively worse the farther they went from the good part of town. Potholes that hadn't been fixed in years. Sidewalks cracked and heaving. Sophie talked about her day, about the math test she thought she'd done okay on, about how Tyler Martinez had gotten sent to the principal's office for putting glue in Madison's hair, about the book fair next week that she really wanted to go to. Liam listened the way he always did, fully present, making the small noises that told her he was paying attention. When they got back to the shop, Sophie went upstairs to the apartment while Liam finished the hydraulic press. She'd do her homework at the kitchen table, probably with the TV on, even though she wasn't supposed to. And around 5:30, she'd come down and ask what was for dinner. That was the routine. That was the life they'd built together after Emily died, and the world had tried to fall apart. Except tonight Marcus was coming over, and the routine was about to change. Marcus arrived at 6:15 driving a Tesla that looked like it had rolled off the lot that morning. He'd done well for himself. The consulting firm had grown into an investment company that specialized in industrial technology, and Marcus had a talent for seeing opportunities other people missed. He wore jeans and a polo shirt, the kind of casual that still cost more than most people's formal wear. And when he walked into the shop, he looked around like he was visiting a museum. Man, this place hasn't changed at all. Why would it? Liam wiped his hands on a rag. It works. Yeah, but you could upgrade, get some newer equipment, maybe hire someone to help out. Don't need help. Marcus smiled, the expression of someone who'd had this argument before and knew better than to push. Sophie upstairs? Doing homework or pretending to. She know what you're thinking about? Not yet. Don't want to get her hopes up if this doesn't work out. They went upstairs. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that barely fit a table, and 4 chairs. But it was clean, and it was theirs, and Sophie had decorated her room with drawings she'd made and posters of animals she liked. She looked up when they came in, saw Marcus, and her face did that thing kids' faces do when they're trying to decide if they remember someone. You came to my birthday party, she said finally. 2 years ago. I did. You had a unicorn cake. It was a Pegasus. Unicorns don't have wings. Marcus laughed. My mistake. How's school? Fine. We're learning about fractions. She said it the way someone might say they were learning about tax law. Dad, can I watch TV while I finish my spelling words? 20 minutes, then dinner. She disappeared into her room. Marcus sat at the kitchen table while Liam pulled out his laptop and opened the Westbrook file. I've been thinking about this for 2 years, Liam said, ever since they shut the place down. It's a good facility, Marcus. Solid infrastructure, existing utilities, rail access. The equipment's outdated, but most of it's salvageable. The real value is the space and the location. Marcus scrolled through the analysis, and his expression shifted from skeptical to interested to genuinely impressed. You did all this yourself? Had a lot of time at night when Sophie was asleep. This is professional grade work, like this is what consulting firms charge 6 figures to produce. Marcus looked up. Why didn't you ever show this to me before? Because I wasn't ready to do anything about it before. And now? Liam thought about Richard's laugh, about Vanessa's surprise that someone like him could fix what her expensive engineers couldn't, about the 400 people who'd lost their jobs when Westbrook closed because executives couldn't see past the next quarterly report. Now I'm ready. They talked through the numbers for an hour. Purchase price, renovation costs, equipment upgrades, staffing requirements. Marcus had questions, good questions, the kind that came from someone who actually understood what they were looking at, and Liam had answers for most of them. The ones he didn't have answers for, he had research plans. You'd need about 12 million to do this right, Marcus said finally. Maybe 15 to be safe. That's a lot of capital for a startup with no track record. I've got a track record. 7 years designing automation systems for defense contractors. Built 3 facilities from the ground up before Emily got sick. I know, but investors don't care about what you did a decade ago. They care about what you can prove you'll do tomorrow. Liam closed the laptop. So prove it to them. How? You've got connections, industrial contacts, people who know this sector. Liam leaned forward. Find me the ones who actually care about building something real instead of just flipping properties for a quick return. The ones who understand that good manufacturing creates jobs and stability and things that matter. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. You know what? I might know a few people like that. Yeah? Yeah, give me a week. Let me make some calls, set up some meetings. But Liam, Marcus's expression turned serious. If we do this, you're all in. No backup plan, no safety net. You'd have to close the shop, dedicate everything to making Westbrook work. And if it fails, you lose everything. From the other room came the sound of Sophie's TV show, something with talking animals and a catchy theme song she'd been singing for 3 days straight. Liam thought about the life they had now, small but stable, predictable, safe. Then he thought about the life they could have if this worked. Set up the meetings, he said. Marcus left around 7:30. Liam made dinner, spaghetti with jarred sauce and frozen meatballs. Nothing fancy, but Sophie ate it without complaining. They watched a nature documentary about penguins while they ate, and Sophie asked questions about how penguins stayed warm in Antarctica and whether they ever got tired of eating fish. After dinner, after Sophie brushed her teeth and put on her pajamas and climbed into bed with her rabbit, Liam sat on the edge of her mattress the way he did every night. Dad? Yeah? Is everything okay? He looked at her. 6 years old, too smart for her own good sometimes, already learning to read the small signs that adults thought they were hiding. Why do you ask? You seem different tonight, like you're thinking about something big. Liam smoothed her hair back from her forehead. I am thinking about something big, but it's good big, not bad big. What is it? I'll tell you when I know for sure if it's going to happen. Deal? She thought about it, then nodded. Deal. Get some sleep, kiddo. Love you, Dad. Love you too. He turned off her light and closed the door partway, the way she liked it, and went back to the kitchen. The Westbrook file was still open on his laptop. He read through it again, looking for problems he might have missed, weaknesses in the plan that would make investors say no. But the plan was solid. He knew it was solid. The question was whether anyone else would see what he saw. The week that followed felt longer than it should have. Liam worked on the repair jobs that came in, a conveyor system from a packaging plant, a pneumatic assembly line that kept misfiring, the CNC machine calibration he'd been putting off. Normal work. The kind of work that filled days and paid bills, and didn't require him to think too hard about anything except the immediate problem in front of him. But his mind kept drifting back to Westbrook, to the possibilities hiding inside that empty building. Marcus called on Wednesday. I've got 3 potential investors interested in hearing your pitch. All of them serious people, real money, experience in manufacturing. Can you meet Friday afternoon? Where? Conference room downtown, 2 o'clock. Wear something without grease on it. Funny. I'm serious. These people aren't going to care about your work boots and folksy charm. They want to see someone who can run a company. Liam looked down at his clothes, jeans with a hole in one knee, a flannel shirt he'd owned since college, steel-toed boots that had definitely seen better days. I'll figure something out. Friday morning, he dropped Sophie off at school, then drove to a department store he almost never went into because the prices made his teeth hurt. He bought dress pants that fit okay, a button-down shirt that didn't make him look like he was trying too hard, and shoes that weren't boots. The total came to $230, which was roughly what he charged for 4 hours of repair work. But Marcus was right. First impressions mattered. The conference room was on the 14th floor of a building made entirely of glass and steel and corporate ambition. Liam rode the elevator up with 3 people in suits who didn't make eye contact and probably assumed he was there to fix the air conditioning. Marcus was waiting in the lobby. You clean up okay? Don't push it. Remember, these people are going to ask hard questions. Don't get defensive. Don't oversell. Just be straight with them. I'm always straight. I know. That's why this might actually work. The conference room had windows overlooking the city and a table that could seat 20 people but currently held only 4. Marcus introduced them, David Chen, who ran a private equity firm specializing in industrial investments, Patricia Morrison, who'd built and sold 3 manufacturing companies and now consulted for startups, and James Webb, who managed a family trust that focused on community development and job creation. They shook hands, Made small talk? Got coffee from a machine that probably cost more than Liam's truck. Then Patricia said, "So, tell us why we should give you $12 million to buy a closed factory." Liam opened his laptop and pulled up the presentation he'd spent the last 3 nights refining. But before he showed them anything, he said, "How many of you have been inside a manufacturing facility in the last year?" David raised his hand. Patricia nodded. James said, "Define manufacturing facility. A place where things are actually made, not managed, not designed, not sold, made." "Then no," James said. "Most investors haven't," Liam said. "They look at spreadsheets and profit margins and ROI calculations, which is fine. Those things matter. But they miss what's actually happening on the floor. They miss the people who show up every day and build components that go into airplanes and medical devices and defense systems. They miss the precision and the skill and the pride that comes from doing something real." He clicked to the first slide. Westbrook employed 400 people before Harrington shut it down. 400 families who lost steady income because some executive in a clean office decided the margins weren't good enough. But the facility itself? Still solid. The equipment? Outdated but functional. The workforce? Scattered now, but most of them are still in the area, still looking for work that matters. Patricia leaned forward. "What makes you think you can succeed where Harrington failed?" "Harrington didn't fail at Westbrook. They chose to abandon it. There's a difference." Liam clicked to the next slide, showing efficiency comparisons. They were running the facility with technology from 2015 and management strategies from the 1990s. No automation integration, no predictive maintenance, no real-time production optimization. "I can fix all of that." "You're one person," David said, "for now. But I've already identified 18 former Westbrook employees who'd come back if the facility reopened under different management. People who know the systems, who care about the work. And I've got contacts in automation engineering who could help design the upgrades." James asked, "What's your timeline?" 6 months to acquire and retrofit. Another 3 to reach operational capacity. Full production within a year." "That's ambitious." "It's realistic if you don't get bogged down in corporate bureaucracy and committee meetings." Liam met his eyes. "I'm not interested in building another Harrington Industries. I want to build something leaner, smarter, and more focused on actually producing quality work than on making executives feel important." A silence fell over the room. Not uncomfortable exactly, but heavy with calculation. Liam could see them processing, weighing, deciding whether this guy from a small repair shop could actually pull off what he was describing. Patricia broke the silence. "I've seen your technical assessment of Westbrook. It's thorough. Impressive, actually. But technical capability isn't the same as business leadership. Have you ever run a company?" "I helped build one. Carter Systems Engineering. We went from 3 people in a rented office to 42 employees and contracts with General Dynamics before I sold my share." "Why did you sell?" "My wife was dying. My daughter needed me home." Liam said it without emotion, just fact. "I chose family over career. I'd make the same choice again." Patricia nodded slowly. "And now?" "Now my daughter's 6 and in school during the day. Now I've got time and ability and a pretty strong motivation to prove that people like me can build something that matters." David tapped his pen against his notepad. "People like you?" "People who work with their hands. People who don't have MBAs or corner offices or executive assistants. People who get laughed at when they walk into corporate headquarters because they drive old trucks and wear work boots." Liam kept his voice level. "I fixed a billion-dollar problem for Harrington Industries last week. Took me 2 hours. Their MIT engineers couldn't do it in 6. But their executives still treated me like I was there to clean the floors." "So this is about revenge," James said. "No, it's about building something real. The revenge, if you want to call it that, is just showing them they were wrong." Liam closed his laptop. "Look, I don't need you to like me. I don't need you to think I'm impressive or polished or whatever it is you usually look for in entrepreneurs. I need you to look at this plan and tell me if you see a viable business. Because I do. I see 400 jobs. I see production capacity that'll outperform anything Harrington currently operates. I see a facility that can produce aerospace-grade components with better precision and lower costs than anyone else in the region." He stood up. "You want to invest in that? Great. You want to pass because I'm not the right kind of person to run a company, that's fine too. But don't tell me it's because the plan isn't solid. Another silence, longer this time. Then Patricia smiled. Sit down, Mr. Carter, we're not done yet. They talked for another hour, went through financial projections, staffing plans, equipment procurement strategies, client acquisition approaches. David asked about competition. Patricia wanted to know about regulatory compliance. James kept circling back to community impact and job creation. Liam answered everything. Some questions he'd anticipated, some he hadn't. But he didn't bullshit them, didn't try to sound like something he wasn't. When he didn't know an answer, he said so and explained how he'd find out. At 3:30, Marcus walked him back to the elevator. That went well, Marcus said. You think? Patricia smiled. She never smiles. And David actually took notes instead of just pretending to. What happens now? They deliberate. Probably take a week, maybe 2. They'll want to verify your claims, check references, maybe visit Westbrook themselves. Marcus pressed the elevator button. But Liam, I think you've got a real shot at this. The elevator arrived. Liam stepped in, then turned back. Thanks for setting this up. Thank me when they write the check. The doors closed. Liam rode down alone, watching the floor numbers descend, and let himself feel something close to hope. He picked up Sophie from after-school care at 5, took her for pizza because Friday was pizza night, and some routines were too important to break. She talked about her week, about the book fair where she'd bought 3 books with the money he'd given her, about how her friend Emma had invited her to a birthday party next month. Can I go? Sophie asked, cheese stringing from her slice to her mouth. Of course! We'll get Emma a present. A good present? The best present. What does Emma like? Art supplies. And unicorns. But not Pegasuses because those are different. They finished eating, drove home through streets that didn't look quite as shabby when Sophie was in the truck chattering about her day. Back at the apartment, Sophie did her reading while Liam cleaned up the shop, and around 8:30 she came down to say goodnight. Dad? Yeah? When you figure out if the big thing is going to happen, you'll tell me, right? Promise. She hugged him, went upstairs, and Liam stood in the quiet shop surrounded by tools and machines and the accumulated evidence of years spent fixing other people's problems. Maybe it was time to fix his own. The investors called on Tuesday. All 3 of them wanted in. They'd verified his technical assessment of Westbrook, checked his references, and decided the plan was viable. David's firm would lead with $6 million. Patricia would put in 3. James's trust would cover the rest plus a contingency fund. $12 million. More money than Liam had ever thought about having, let alone using. Marcus handled the paperwork. Lawyers got involved, contracts got written, due diligence got done. The process took 3 weeks of meetings and signatures and explanations of things Liam already understood, but had to explain again because that was how these things worked. On a Tuesday morning in early November, Liam became the owner of the Westbrook facility. He drove out there that afternoon, parked in the empty lot where 400 cars used to sit, and walked through the building alone. Rain dripped through holes in the roof. Windows were broken. Graffiti covered some of the walls where kids had snuck in looking for a place to cause trouble. But beneath the damage and neglect, he saw what he'd always seen, potential. The production equipment was still there, dormant but salvageable. The electrical infrastructure needed work, but the bones were good. The office space needed cleaning, but the layout was functional. This wasn't a building that had died. It was a building that had been abandoned. Liam stood in the center of the main production floor, in the spot where someday machines would run and people would work and things would be made, and he pulled out his phone. Marcus? Start making calls to the former employees. Tell them we're hiring. All 18? Everyone who wants to come back. We're going to need them. He hung up and stood there a while longer, listening to the rain hit the metal roof, feeling the weight of what he'd just taken on. $12 million. 400 potential jobs. A building full of broken things that needed fixing. But fixing broken things was what he did. And this time, he wasn't doing it alone. The first person Liam called back was a man named Ray Tomlin, 53 years old, who'd worked at Westbrook for 26 years before the shutdown. Ray had run the quality control department, knew every inspection protocol by heart, and according to his file had never let a defective component leave the facility. When Liam reached him on his cell phone, Ray was working security at a shopping mall 40 minutes outside the city. This some kind of joke? Ray's voice carried the rough edges of someone who'd stopped believing in good news. No joke, Westbrook's reopening. Different ownership, different approach. I want you back running QC. Silence on the line. Then, who the hell are you? Liam Carter. I bought the facility 3 days ago. Carter! Ray repeated the name like he was trying to place it. You're the guy who fixed Harrington's production line. Heard about that. Heard you made their fancy engineers look like idiots. I fixed a problem, that's all. Yeah, and now you bought Westbrook. Ray laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. You know what you're getting into? That place is a disaster. Equipment's probably rusted to hell. Roof's got more holes than a screen door, and good luck finding anyone who wants to work there after what Harrington did to us. I'm finding you, aren't I? Another pause. What's the pay? Liam told him. It wasn't as much as Ray had made before. The budget couldn't support that yet. But it was more than mall security paid, and it came with the promise of raises once production got rolling. When do you need an answer? Today would be good. Tomorrow at the latest. I want to start renovations next week. Ray went quiet again. Liam could hear voices in the background, the tinny sound of mall music playing through speakers. My wife's going to think I'm crazy. Probably. You coming back or not? Yeah, I'm coming back. But Carter? If this turns out to be some corporate bullshit dressed up as a second chance, I'm going to be pissed. It's not corporate anything. It's just me trying to build something that works. We'll see. Liam made 17 more calls that day. Some went to voicemail. Some people had moved out of state. 3 had found good jobs elsewhere and politely declined. But 12 said yes, including a machinist named Angela Torres who'd been working part-time at a hardware store, and a logistics coordinator named David Park, who'd been driving for a delivery service since Westbrook closed. Each conversation followed a similar pattern: disbelief, suspicion, cautious hope. These were people who'd been burned before, who'd watched their careers disappear because someone in an office decided the numbers didn't work. They wanted to believe Westbrook could come back, but belief was expensive when you'd already lost everything once. Liam understood that. He'd felt the same way after Emily died, when well-meaning people told him things would get better, and he'd wanted to punch them for thinking words could fix what was broken. By the end of the week, he had 15 former Westbrook employees committed to coming back. It wasn't 400, but it was a start. The renovations began on a Monday morning that came in gray and cold with the promise of snow before nightfall. Liam had hired a contractor named Bill Henderson who specialized in industrial retrofits and had a reputation for getting things done on time and under budget. Bill walked through Westbrook with a clipboard and an expression that suggested he'd seen worse, but not by much. Roof's shot, Bill said. Electrical system needs a complete overhaul. HVAC is dead. Plumbing's questionable. And I'm pretty sure you've got a family of raccoons living in the northwest corner. Can you fix it? Can I fix it? Sure. Can I fix it in 6 months? That's a different question. I need it done in 4. Bill looked at him like he'd suggested they build a rocket ship. 4 months to make this place operational? You're out of your mind. Probably. Can you do it or not? It'll cost you. Overtime, weekend crews, expedited materials. I've got the budget. What I don't have is time. Bill chewed on that for a moment, then nodded. All right, but I'm going to need full access to the building, no restrictions on work hours, and you stay out of my way while my crews are working. Deal. They shook on it. By that afternoon, construction crews were ripping out damaged roofing panels and marking walls that needed to be torn down. The noise was incredible. Sledgehammers and power saws, and the crash of debris being thrown into dumpsters. Liam stood in the parking lot watching it all happen and felt something close to satisfaction. Sophie noticed the changes first. Not at Westbrook. He hadn't told her about that yet. But in him. The way he'd started waking up earlier, working later, coming home with the kind of tired that came from building instead of just maintaining. Dad, are you okay? She asked one night at dinner, poking at her chicken nuggets with more concern than a 6-year-old should have to feel. I'm good, kiddo, just busy with a big project. The thing you were thinking about? Yeah. Is it happening? Liam set down his fork. He'd planned to wait until everything was more certain, until the facility was closer to operational, but Sophie had a way of asking questions that deserved honest answers. You remember Westbrook, the big factory on the west side that closed down? She shook her head. She'd been 4 when it shut down, too young to notice or care about industrial facilities. It's a place where people used to make really important parts for airplanes and other machines. But the company that owned it decided to close it, and a lot of people lost their jobs. Liam picked his words carefully. I bought it. I'm going to fix it up and open it again. Sophie's eyes went wide. You bought a whole factory? I did. That's a lot bigger than the shop. A lot bigger. Are you going to stop fixing things at the shop? And there it was, the question he'd been dreading. Because the answer was yes. Eventually he'd have to close Carter Repair and Machining to focus on Westbrook full-time, and that meant giving up the small, steady life they'd built for something uncertain and risky. Not right away, he said. But yeah, probably soon. The factory's going to need all my time once it's running. Sophie thought about this while chewing a nugget. Will you still pick me up from school? Every day. That's not changing. Okay. She seemed satisfied with that. Can I see the factory? When it's safer. Right now there's construction everywhere, and it's kind of dangerous. But later? Later, definitely. She went back to her dinner, apparently unconcerned that her father had just completely upended their lives. Kids were like that sometimes, adaptable in ways adults forgot how to be. The weeks that followed blurred together into a continuous stream of decisions and problems and small victories. The roof got replaced. The electrical system got upgraded. Bill's crews worked 12-hour days and somehow made the impossible timeline seem almost reasonable. Liam spent his mornings at Westbrook overseeing renovations and his afternoons at the shop finishing up repair contracts he'd already committed to. He didn't take new jobs. Word got around that Carter Repair was winding down, and some of his regular clients weren't happy about it. Where am I supposed to take my equipment? Asked Tom Rivera, who owned a metal fabrication shop and had been bringing Liam his broken machinery for 5 years. There's a good outfit over on Campbell Street, Miller Industrial Services. Tell them I sent you. It's not the same. I know, but I can't do both. Tom left unhappy but understanding, and Liam felt the weight of it. These were relationships he'd built, people who'd trusted him with their livelihoods. Walking away felt wrong even when it was necessary. By mid-December, Westbrook's shell was nearly complete. New roof, functioning utilities, walls that didn't leak when it rained. The production floor was still empty. The equipment refurbishment hadn't started yet, but the building itself was solid again. Ray Tomlin walked through it one Saturday morning with Liam, taking in the changes with an expression that kept shifting between impressed and skeptical. I'll be damned, Ray said. You actually did it. Building's done. Now comes the hard part. Installing the equipment? Making it work better than it did before. Liam pulled up schematics on his tablet. Every production line is getting automation upgrades, real-time monitoring, predictive maintenance, quality control integration. We're not just rebuilding what was here. We're building something better. Ray studied the schematics. This is sophisticated stuff. Who's designing the automation systems? I am. By yourself? I've got some consultants helping with specific components. But yeah, mostly me. Ray looked at him with a new appreciation. You really were an engineer before all this. Still am. Just had a detour through single fatherhood and small business ownership. Hell of a detour. Ray handed back the tablet. When do we start equipment installation? January. Soon as the environmental controls are fully operational. Can't risk bringing in precision machinery until we can maintain proper temperature and humidity. You thought of everything, haven't you? Tried to, probably missed something. Ray laughed. Yeah, you probably did, but so far you're doing all right. They walked the production floor together, Ray pointing out spots where specific machines used to sit, telling stories about the people who'd operated them. There'd been a guy named Martinez who could eyeball tolerances to within 1,000th of an inch. A woman named Chen who'd worked the overnight shift for 12 years and never missed a day. People who'd cared about the work, who'd taken pride in what they built. They deserve to have this place back, Ray said quietly. Not the way it was. Harrington ran it into the ground with their cost-cutting bullshit, but better. The way it should have been all along. Liam nodded. He'd thought the same thing 100 times since buying Westbrook. This wasn't about revenge or proving anything to Vanessa Harrington. It was about giving people like Martinez and Chen a place where their skills mattered again. Christmas came and went quietly. Liam got Sophie the art supplies she'd been hinting about. and a new backpack because hers was falling apart. She got him a coffee mug she'd made in art class with "World's Best Dad" painted on it in slightly crooked letters. They spent Christmas morning in their apartment, just the two of them, and it was enough. The shop closed for good on January 3rd. Liam spent the last day cleaning, organizing tools, making sure everything he'd need for Westbrook was packed and ready to transport. Mrs. Nguyen from the restaurant next door brought him banh mi and wouldn't accept payment. "For luck," she said. "New beginning." "Thanks, Mrs. Nguyen. You come back, visit sometime, tell me how factory goes." "I will." That night he stood in the empty shop one last time. The walls still had the marks where equipment had sat for years. The floor still showed the stains from 1,000 repair jobs. This had been his life for 6 years. Small, manageable, safe. He locked the door and didn't look back. Equipment installation at Westbrook started the second week of January. Massive cranes lifted machinery through reinforced loading doors. Specialized technicians calibrated systems to tolerances measured in microns. Liam worked alongside them, 18-hour days, checking every connection and verifying every specification. Angela Torres, the machinist he'd called back, showed up on day 3 and immediately started pointing out problems. "This mounting isn't level," she said, tapping a fabrication unit with her knuckle. "See? 3 millimeters off on the northeast corner." The installation tech looked annoyed. "It's within tolerance." "Your tolerance, maybe, not mine." Angela pulled out a precision level. "We're building aerospace components here. 3 millimeters might as well be 3 miles. The tech started to argue, caught Liam's expression, and wisely decided to fix it instead. Angela grinned at Liam. "I like this already. Nobody telling me good enough is actually good enough." More former employees trickled in as installation progressed. David Park took over logistics coordination, mapping out workflow patterns and material handling procedures. A quality engineer named Sandra Mitchell set up the inspection stations. Each person who came back brought expertise and institutional knowledge that couldn't be replaced or trained into someone new. But they also brought anger. Not at Liam, at Harrington Industries, at the executives who'd thrown them away like broken equipment. It came out in small comments, bitter jokes, the occasional flash of real rage when someone remembered how it had felt to lose everything. Ray noticed it too. "People are pissed," he told Liam one afternoon while they were testing a production line. "And I don't blame them. But we need to make sure that anger gets channeled into the work, not into grudges." "You think it will be?" "Depends. They trust you so far. You've delivered on what you said you would. But the first time something goes wrong, the first time we hit a setback, they're going to wonder if this is just Harrington all over again." Liam understood. Trust was built in inches and lost in miles. He'd have to earn it every single day. The first production test happened on February 14th, Valentine's Day, which Sophie found hilarious for reasons she couldn't quite articulate. Liam had invited all 15 employees to watch, along with Marcus and the 3 investors who'd made Westbrook possible. The production line they were testing manufactured precision mounting brackets for satellite systems, relatively simple components, but with exacting tolerances. If this worked, it proved the facility could handle the kind of work that would attract serious clients. Everyone gathered around the line. Liam initialized the automation sequence from the main control terminal, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the machines hummed to life with a sound that was both familiar and entirely new. Familiar because it was machinery doing what machinery did, new because it was doing it better than it ever had before. The fabrication unit cut raw aluminum to exact specifications. The milling station shaped it with computer-controlled precision. The finishing process smoothed edges to aerospace standards. The whole sequence took 4 minutes and produced a bracket that looked absolutely perfect. Ray took it to the inspection station and ran it through every test they had: dimensional accuracy, surface finish, structural integrity. When he came back, he was smiling. 0.001 millimeter variance. Across the board. He held up the bracket. "This is better than anything we ever produced under Harrington." The employees erupted in applause and cheers. Angela hugged Sandra. David shook Liam's hand so hard it hurt. Even Marcus looked genuinely moved, and he'd seen plenty of successful startups before. Patricia Morrison, the investor who never smiled, smiled. "Well," she said to Liam, "I believe you've earned your investment." Over the next month, Westbrook ramped up production gradually. 1 line, then 2, then 3. Each component that came off the line got inspected with obsessive attention to detail. Every process got monitored and optimized. Liam had built automation systems before, but this felt different, more personal, more important. He started reaching out to potential clients in late February. Defense contractors who'd worked with his old company. Aerospace manufacturers who needed reliable suppliers. Industrial firms looking for precision components. Most of them had never heard of Carter Industrial, and the ones who had knew it only as a startup with no track record. But Liam had samples. Perfect samples, produced with better precision and lower costs than most established facilities could manage. And he had something else, a reputation in certain circles as the engineer who'd fixed what no one else could fix. The first major contract came from a defense contractor called Titan Systems. They needed mounting assemblies for a new communications array, 3,000 units with delivery over 6 months. It wasn't huge, but it was real work from a serious client. Liam negotiated the contract himself, drove 3 hours to Titan's headquarters, and sat across from their procurement director trying not to look as nervous as he felt. "Your samples are exceptional," the director said, "but you've got no delivery history, no established quality metrics, no references we can verify. I've got 15 employees who spent decades producing work for companies just like yours. I've got equipment that's more advanced than most of your current suppliers. And I've got every motivation in the world to deliver exactly what I promise, because if I don't, this whole thing falls apart." The director studied him. "Why'd you leave engineering to run a repair shop?" "My wife was dying. My daughter needed me. And now? Now I'm doing what I should have been doing all along, building things that matter." The director tapped his pen against his desk, thinking. Then he slid a contract across the table. 3,000 units, 6-month delivery window. But Carter, if you're even 1 day late or one component fails inspection, we're done. Permanently. Liam signed without hesitation. Word of the Titan contract spread fast through industrial circles. Within 2 weeks, Liam had inquiries from 4 other companies. 2 wanted quotes for prototype work. 1 needed rush production on a component their regular supplier couldn't deliver. The 4th was Orion Aerospace, a major player that had been one of Harrington Industries' biggest clients. Liam took the call from Orion's sourcing manager on a Tuesday afternoon while standing in Westbrook's parking lot watching a delivery truck unload raw materials. "We're looking to diversify our supplier base," the manager said. "Harrington's quality has been slipping lately. Missed deadlines, defect rates climbing. We've heard interesting things about your operation." "What kind of things?" "That you're producing aerospace-grade components with better precision than facilities 10 times your size. That you've got former Harrington employees who know our specifications inside and out. That you used to design the kind of systems we need." Liam felt something cold settle in his chest. "You're one of Harrington's clients. One of their largest. Why?" "Just making sure I understand the situation." The manager laughed. "If you're worried about stepping on toes, don't be. This is business. Harrington's failing to deliver what they promised. You can deliver it better. That's all that matters to us." They scheduled a facility tour for the following week. Liam hung up and stood in the parking lot a while longer, thinking about what it meant that Harrington's clients were already looking elsewhere, about what Vanessa would think when she found out where they were looking. He told himself it didn't matter. This wasn't about her, but he'd be lying if he said it didn't feel like vindication. The Orion tour happened on a Thursday morning. 3 people from their sourcing and engineering departments walked through Westbrook with the kind of practiced skepticism that came from visiting too many facilities that promised more than they could deliver. But Angela ran a flawless demonstration of the fabrication process. Ray showed them quality control protocols that exceeded industry standards. Sandra walked them through inspection procedures that caught defects most facilities would miss. By the time they reached Liam's office, a small room with a desk he'd bought used and a whiteboard covered in production schedules, the lead engineer was smiling. "I've got to say, this is impressive, especially for a startup." "We're not reinventing anything," Liam said. "Just doing the basics right." "The basics are harder than most people think." The engineer pulled out a tablet. "We'd like to start with a trial order, 500 units, standard aerospace mounting brackets. If quality holds up, we'll talk about a longer-term contract." "What kind of timeline?" 8 weeks for delivery." Liam did the math in his head. It was tight, but doable if they didn't hit any major problems. "We can make that work." They shook hands. The Orion team left, and Liam sat in his office staring at the production schedule, trying to figure out how to deliver for both Titan and Orion without overextending the facility's capacity. Ray stuck his head in. We got it? Trial order, 500 units. That's Harrington's client. I know. Ray grinned. Bet that feels good. Feels like work, which is what it is. Sure. But come on, man. You've got to appreciate the irony. Liam did appreciate it. He just didn't want to get distracted by it. March brought the kind of chaos that came with rapid growth. Production ramped up faster than anticipated. New clients kept calling. Equipment that was supposed to be backup got pressed into primary service. Liam hired 6 more people, not former Westbrook employees this time, but skilled workers from other facilities who'd heard Carter Industrial was the place to be. Sophie started asking why he came home so late every night. Just busy with the factory, he'd say. Is it going good? Really good. Then why do you look so tired? Because growing a business from nothing to something real was exhausting in ways he'd forgotten. Because every success created new problems to solve. Because he was terrified of failing all the people who'd trusted him enough to come back. But he didn't say any of that. He just hugged his daughter and told her he was fine. On a Friday in late March, Marcus called with news. Harrington Industries just lost their second largest client, Atlas Defense. Word is they're shopping for new suppliers. Liam was in the middle of calibrating a temperamental milling station and almost dropped his wrench. How do you know? I know people who know people. Atlas put out quiet feelers to 3 companies. You're one of them. They contacted us? Not yet, but they will. Probably Monday. Liam finished the calibration, set down his tools, and walked out to the parking lot where he could think. Harrington was losing clients, major clients, and they were coming to Carter Industrial instead. He should have felt triumphant, should have felt like this was exactly what he'd wanted, proof that he'd been right, that Vanessa and her executives had been wrong, but mostly he felt worried, because if Harrington was falling apart, there'd be consequences, job losses, industry disruption, people who had nothing to do with Richard's condescension or corporate incompetence paying the price. His phone rang. Unknown number. Liam Carter. Mr. Carter, this is Jennifer Walsh from Harrington Industries. I'm calling on behalf of CEO Vanessa Harrington. She'd like to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Liam looked up at the Westbrook building, at the windows that were lit even though it was past 7 on a Friday evening because his team was working overtime to meet deadlines. Tell Ms. Harrington I'm pretty busy these days. She'll have to come to me. A pause. I'll relay that message. You do that. He hung up and went back inside. There was work to do, and whatever Vanessa Harrington wanted could wait. Vanessa Harrington showed up at Westbrook on a Tuesday morning in early April without another appointment call, without her assistant, and without the armor of executive confidence she'd worn the last time Liam had seen her. She drove herself in a BMW that looked like it cost more than most people's houses and parked next to Liam's truck, which still had the dented tailgate and the rust spots in the passenger door that only opened from the inside. Ray saw her first through the window of the quality control station and came to find Liam in the production area where he was troubleshooting a sensor calibration issue with Angela. You've got a visitor, Ray said, his tone suggesting this wasn't the good kind of visitor. Who? Vanessa Harrington. Angela looked up from the sensor array, eyebrows raised. The Vanessa Harrington? From the company that screwed us all over? That's the one, Ray said. Liam felt something tight settle in his chest. He'd known this conversation was coming eventually, but he'd hoped for more time, more contracts signed, more proof that Carter Industrial wasn't just viable but unstoppable. Where is she? Lobby. Looking uncomfortable. The lobby wasn't really a lobby yet, just a cleared space near the entrance with a desk that used to be in a high school and some chairs Liam had bought at a liquidation sale. Vanessa stood in the middle of it wearing a coat that probably cost $3,000 and an expression that suggested she was recalculating every assumption she'd ever made. She turned when Liam walked in, and for a second neither of them spoke. Mr. Carter. Miss Harrington. I apologize for showing up without an appointment. Your assistant said you were too busy to meet this week. Don't have an assistant. That was probably Ray, and he was being polite. What I actually said was, you'd have to come here if you wanted to talk. A faint flush colored her cheeks. I see. Did you want the tour, or should we just get to why you're here? Vanessa glanced around the lobby, at the production floor visible through the windows, at the people working with the kind of focus that came from actually caring about what they were building. The tour, please. Liam led her through Westbrook methodically, not rushing, not performing. He showed her the production lines running at optimal efficiency. The quality control stations where every component got inspected to tolerances most facilities didn't bother with. The automation systems he designed himself that monitored everything in real time and flagged problems before they became failures. They passed Angela at the fabrication station, and she looked up long enough to give Vanessa a stare that could have frozen water. Vanessa noticed, but said nothing. In the logistics area, David Park was coordinating a material delivery with the kind of precision that came from years of experience. He nodded at Liam, but ignored Vanessa completely. Ray was the only one who acknowledged her directly. Ms. Harrington, he said with exaggerated politeness. Nice to see you again. Last time was when you signed my termination papers. Ray, Save it, I'm working now. Vanessa's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. They finished the tour in Liam's office, which still didn't have much beyond the used desk and the whiteboard covered in production schedules and efficiency calculations. Liam offered her the only other chair in the room and leaned against the desk. So, he said, you came all the way here to see what I've built. Was it what you expected? Honestly, no. Vanessa looked out the window at the production floor. It's better than I expected. Better than some of our own facilities, if I'm being truthful. You are being truthful, or you're saying you are. I'm being truthful. She met his eyes. I made a mistake, Mr. Carter. Several mistakes, actually. And I'm here to see if there's a way to fix them. Which mistakes are we talking about? Shutting down Westbrook? Ignoring my analysis when I told you this facility had potential? Or laughing when I showed up to save your production line? All of them. Liam had prepared for this conversation in his head a dozen different ways. He'd imagined being cold, being professional, being the bigger person. But now that she was actually here, admitting she'd been wrong, he found he didn't want to make it easy. Your executives treated me like I was there to mop floors, he said quietly. Richard made jokes about my truck and my company. Your engineers acted like I'd gotten lost on the way to fix someone's washing machine. And you looked at me and decided I wasn't worth your respect. You're right. I know I'm right. Question is what you're going to do about it. Vanessa pulled a folder from her bag and set it on the desk. This is a partnership proposal. Harrington Industries would like to enter into a long-term supply agreement with Carter Industrial. Exclusive contracts for several of our major production lines, priority pricing, technical collaboration on new projects. Liam picked up the folder but didn't open it. Why? Because we're losing clients. Because our quality has declined and our delivery times have gotten worse. Because the people running our facilities don't understand the work the way someone like you does. She paused. And because I've spent the last 3 months realizing that the mechanic I dismissed could run circles around everyone on my executive team. I'm not a mechanic. I know that now. Liam opened the folder and scanned the proposal. The numbers were generous, more than generous, actually. The kind of deal that would secure Carter Industrial's future and provide steady work for years. On paper, it was everything he should want. But something about it felt wrong. This is a good offer, he said carefully. But it's also a way for you to lock up capacity so your competitors can't get to me. You're not offering partnership. You're trying to control the one supplier who's making you look bad. Vanessa didn't deny it. It's both. I need reliable production and you need clients. This benefits everyone. Everyone except the other manufacturers who want to work with me. Everyone except the innovation that happens when suppliers aren't locked into exclusive agreements. Liam closed the folder. I'm not interested in being Harrington's captive vendor. Then what would you be interested in? Honest business. You need components. I'll quote you fair prices and deliver quality work. But I'm not signing away my future because you're scared of the competition you created by running your own company into the ground. The words landed harder than he'd intended, and he saw Vanessa flinch. For a moment, she looked less like a billionaire CEO and more like someone who'd been carrying weight she didn't know how to put down. You think I ran my company into the ground? Her voice was quieter now. I think you let executives like Richard make decisions based on spreadsheets, instead of understanding what actually mattered. I think you shut down Westbrook to save money in the short term without seeing what you were losing in the long term. I think you built an empire on other people's work and forgot to notice the people doing it. Vanessa was silent for a long moment. Outside, the production line hummed steadily, the sound of precision machinery doing exactly what it was designed to do. My father started Harrington Industries 40 years ago, she said finally. Built it from nothing into one of the most respected manufacturing companies in the country. When he died 5 years ago, I inherited everything, the company, the reputation, the expectation that I'd keep it all running perfectly. She looked at her hands. I was 25. I had an MBA and absolutely no idea how to actually run a factory. So I hired the smartest people I could find, people with decades of experience, and I trusted them to know what they were doing. They didn't? Some did. But people like Richard, they knew how to optimize profit margins and keep shareholders happy. They didn't know how to build anything real, and I didn't know enough to tell the difference. She looked up at Liam. When you submitted that analysis of Westbrook, it went across my desk. I remember reading it and thinking it seemed thorough. But Richard and the operations team said consolidation made more financial sense, and I believed them because I didn't trust my own judgment. And now? Now I'm watching the company my father built fall apart because I made the wrong choices about who to listen to. Her voice cracked slightly. Now I'm 30 years old with a billion-dollar company that's hemorrhaging clients because I was too arrogant to admit I didn't know what I was doing. Liam had expected anger or defensiveness or corporate double talk. He hadn't expected this, raw honesty that felt like it cost her something to admit. Why are you telling me this? Because you were right about Westbrook, about the automation systems, about everything. And I need to understand how you saw what I couldn't. Liam pushed off the desk and walked to the window. Below, Angela was training a new machinist on the fabrication equipment, patient and thorough, passing on knowledge the way good teachers did. Ray was inspecting components with the same obsessive attention to detail he'd had for 26 years at Westbrook. These were people who understood the work because they'd done the work. Madit. I saw it because I was part of it, Liam said. I designed automation systems for 7 years. I know what makes production lines run efficiently and what makes them break down. I know the difference between equipment that's outdated and equipment that's obsolete. Your executives looked at Westbrook and saw old buildings and aging machinery. I looked at it and saw potential. So how do I learn to see that? You probably can't, not completely, but you can stop pretending you know things you don't and start listening to people who actually do the work. He turned back to her. When's the last time you spent a full day on a production floor? Not walking through on a tour, actually working alongside the people running the equipment? Vanessa looked uncomfortable. I don't know. Maybe never? That's your problem. You're running a manufacturing company from a corner office, making decisions about work you've never done and people you've never bothered to understand. That's what executives do. Yeah, and look how well it's working out. The silence that followed was heavy, but not hostile. Vanessa seemed to be processing something, working through realizations that probably should have come years earlier. I fired Richard 3 weeks ago, she said abruptly, and 2 other executives who thought the same way he did. The board wasn't happy about it. Why'd you do it? Because I kept hearing stories about the mechanic who fixed our production line, about how you walked in and solved in 2 hours what our engineers couldn't solve in 6, about how you were building something real while we were just maintaining what my father had built. She met his eyes. I needed to understand what made you different, and I realized it was that you actually cared about the work, not just the profits. Liam sat down in his chair, suddenly tired. Look, I appreciate you coming here, and I'm sorry about your company struggling, but I can't fix Harrington Industries for you. I've got my own facility to run and my own people to take care of. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm asking if you'd consider working with us. Not the exclusive partnership in that folder, just regular business. We need suppliers we can trust, and I think you're someone worth trusting. Even though I'm taking your clients? You're not taking them. They're leaving because we're failing to deliver what we promised. That's on us, not you. Vanessa stood. I should go. I've taken enough of your time. She started toward the door, then stopped. Mr. Carter, that day at our facility, when you fixed the production line, I didn't just laugh because of your truck or your clothes. I laughed because I was relieved someone had shown up at all, and nervous about whether you could actually help, and trying to hide how scared I was that we'd lose the contract. She looked at him. It wasn't kind, and it wasn't fair to you, but it wasn't contempt. It was fear. Fear of what? Of failing, of proving I wasn't capable of running what my father built, of becoming the person who destroyed his legacy. She smiled, but it was sad. Turns out I did that anyway. She left before Liam could respond. He watched through the window as she walked to her BMW, got in, and sat there for a moment before driving away. He wasn't sure what he'd expected from this conversation, but it hadn't been that. Ray came in a few minutes later. So, what'd the CEO want? Partnership deal, exclusive supply contract. You take it? No. Good. We don't need Harrington's baggage, Ray paused. She say anything about shutting down Westbrook? She said it was a mistake. Yeah? Well, mistakes have consequences. 400 people lost their jobs because of that mistake. Little late for apologies. Liam understood the anger. He felt it too sometimes, in quiet moments when he thought about all the people who'd been hurt by decisions made in boardrooms by people who'd never had to live with the fallout. But he also thought about Vanessa sitting in his office, admitting she'd been wrong, looking more lost than arrogant. People make mistakes, Ray. Even billionaires. Sure, but most people don't get second chances to fix them. Ray headed back to the production floor. Speaking of which, the Atlas Defense people called. They want to set up a facility tour next week. Another major client sniffing around. Another piece of Harrington's empire looking for somewhere better to go. Liam should have felt victorious, but mostly he felt the weight of responsibility. Every new client meant more people depending on Carter Industrial to deliver. More families relying on the jobs he'd created. More chances to screw it all up. He spent the rest of the day buried in production schedules and quality reports, trying to figure out how to scale up capacity without sacrificing the attention to detail that made Carter Industrial's work exceptional. It was a problem every growing company faced, but knowing that didn't make it easier to solve. Sophie had a field trip that day, so Mrs. Henderson from down the hall picked her up from school and brought her to Westbrook around 5. Sophie walked in wide-eyed, staring at the machinery and the people in safety gear and the organized chaos of a facility in full production. "This is where you work now?" she asked. "This is where we work, all of us." Liam introduced her to Angela and Ray and David, and each of them shook her hand seriously like she was important, which to Liam, she was the most important thing in the world. Angela showed Sophie a component they'd just finished inspecting. "See how smooth this edge is? That's because we take our time and do it right." "What's it for?" "Goes in satellites, the things that orbit Earth and help phones and GPS work." Sophie touched it carefully, like it might break. "That's cool." "Pretty cool, yeah." They walked the production floor together, father and daughter, and Liam explained what each machine did in terms simple enough for a 6-year-old to understand. Sophie asked questions about everything: why the machines were so loud, how they knew if something was made correctly, whether robots did the work or people. "Mostly people," Liam said. "The machines help, but people are what matter." On the way home, Sophie was quiet for a while, looking out the window at the city passing by. Then she said, "Dad, are you happy now?" The question surprised him. "What do you mean?" "You seem different than you did at the old shop, busier, but also like you're doing something you wanted to do." Liam thought about it. Was he happy? He was exhausted, stressed, worried constantly about production deadlines and quality standards and whether he'd made the right choice leaving the safe predictability of the repair shop. But he was also building something real, creating jobs for people who deserved them, proving that someone like him, someone without an MBA or a corner office or executives to hide behind, could run a company that mattered. "Yeah," he said, "I think I am happy. It's hard and I'm tired a lot, but it's good hard." "Okay, just wanted to make sure." They stopped for pizza on the way home because Tuesday was pizza night, and some traditions survived even when everything else changed. Sophie talked about her field trip to the Science Museum, about the planetarium show that had made her dizzy, about how her friend Emma had bought a geode in the gift shop. Normal kid stuff. The kind of stuff that reminded Liam why he'd walked away from his engineering career in the first place. Because yeah, building Carter Industrial mattered, but being Sophie's dad mattered more. Atlas Defense came for their facility tour the following Tuesday. 3 people from procurement and engineering, all of them wearing expressions that suggested they'd seen plenty of facilities make big promises and fail to deliver. But Carter Industrial delivered. Angela ran them through a production demonstration that was flawless. Ray showed them quality control procedures that made their own standards look sloppy. Liam walked them through the automation systems and fielded technical questions that most facility owners couldn't have answered. By the end of the tour, the lead procurement officer was smiling. "I'll be honest, Mr. Carter, we came here skeptical. Harrington's been our primary supplier for aerospace components for 8 years. But their quality's declined steadily over the last 18 months. And when we raised concerns, they made excuses instead of fixing the problems." "What kind of problems?" "Dimensional variances outside spec, missed delivery dates, inconsistent surface finishes." He pulled out a tablet. "We need a supplier who can produce to exact standards and deliver on time. Can you do that?" "Yes." "No qualifications? No, we'll try our best?" "We'll deliver what we promise. On time, to spec, every time. And if something goes wrong, which it might, because nothing's perfect, we'll tell you immediately and fix it." Liam met his eyes. "I'm not going to make excuses or hide behind corporate speak. This is my facility, my reputation, my people. We succeed or fail based on the work we do." The procurement officer looked at his colleagues, who both nodded. "All right, we'd like to start with a trial contract. 2,000 units over 3 months. If that goes well, we'll talk about becoming a primary supplier." They shook hands. The Atlas team left, and Ray let out a whoop that echoed across the production floor. "We just landed Atlas Defense. Do you know how big they are?" "I know." "This is huge, Liam. This is company making huge." Angela came over grinning. "Harrington's going to lose their minds when they find out." "Probably," Liam said. "But that's not why we did it." "Sure, but it's a nice bonus." The news spread through the facility within the hour. People who'd lost jobs when Westbrook closed now working for a company that was taking contracts from the people who'd fired them. It felt like justice, or as close to justice as most of them would ever get. But Liam couldn't shake the image of Vanessa sitting in his office looking lost, admitting she'd made mistakes she didn't know how to fix. Harrington Industries was failing, and yeah, part of him felt vindicated. But another part, a part he didn't particularly like, felt something close to sympathy. Marcus called that evening while Liam was making dinner. "I heard about Atlas. Congratulations." "Thanks. You know what this means, right? You're not a startup anymore. You're a legitimate manufacturing company with major clients and a growing reputation. Still feels like we're making it up as we go. That's how everyone feels. The difference is you're actually succeeding at it." Marcus paused. "Have you thought about expanding? Adding a second facility?" "We've been operational for 2 months, Marcus. Maybe let's master 1 facility before we start talking about 2. "Fair enough. But Liam, you've built something special here. Don't undersell it just because it doesn't fit the corporate mold." After they hung up, Liam stood in the kitchen stirring pasta sauce and thinking about what Marcus had said. Something special. Was that what this was? Or was it just a bunch of people working hard to prove they mattered? Maybe it was both. Sophie came downstairs in her pajamas, even though it was only 6:30, carrying her rabbit and a book about dolphins. "Can we read together after dinner?" "Absolutely." They ate spaghetti and read about dolphins and their complex social structures, and Sophie asked questions about how dolphins communicated and whether they had friends like people did. Normal evening, normal routine, the kind of quiet domestic life that had nothing to do with industrial manufacturing or corporate competition. This was what mattered. This right here. The rest would work itself out. The following week brought 3 more client inquiries, 2 facility tours, and a component delivery for Titan systems that passed inspection with 0 defects. Carter Industrial was running at near capacity, and Liam was already planning how to add another production line without disrupting existing operations. But on Thursday afternoon, Marcus called with news that stopped everything. Harrington Industries just filed for Chapter 11. Liam was in the middle of reviewing quality reports and nearly dropped his tablet. "They what?" "Bankruptcy protection. The filing went public an hour ago. They're restructuring to avoid complete collapse." "How bad is it?" "Bad. They're selling off 3 facilities and laying off about 40% of their workforce. The stock's in free fall. Industry blogs are already writing obituaries. Liam sat down heavily. Harrington Industries, the company that had seemed untouchable 6 months ago, was falling apart. And he'd played a role in that, whether he'd intended to or not. Every client Carter Industrial took was a client Harrington lost. Every contract he signed was revenue they needed to survive. What about the employees, he asked. Most will get severance packages, some will find work at other facilities. But Liam, we're talking about potentially 1,000 people losing their jobs across all their operations. 1,000 people, 1,000 families, all because executives had made bad decisions and the company had failed to adapt. Sophie called from upstairs asking for help with her homework, and Liam told her he'd be right there. He sat in his office a moment longer, looking at the Westbrook production floor through the window, at the 21 people who now had jobs because he'd taken a risk. 21 jobs created, potentially 1,000 lost. The math didn't balance. He went upstairs and helped Sophie with her fractions, explaining that 3/4 was the same as 6/8, just in different sizes. She got it eventually, her face lighting up with understanding, and Liam wished adult problems were that simple. That night after Sophie was asleep, he pulled out his laptop and read the news coverage about Harrington's bankruptcy. The articles talked about mismanagement and market conditions and the changing landscape of industrial manufacturing. They mentioned the loss of several major clients, but didn't name Carter Industrial specifically. Not yet, anyway. His phone buzzed with the text from an unknown number. "This is Vanessa Harrington. I'm sure you've heard the news. I don't blame you for any of this. You built something honest while we let everything fall apart. I just wanted you to know that." Liam stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I'm sorry about your employees. If any of them need work and have the right skills, send them my way." 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing. Then they disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally. "Thank you. That means more than you know." He set down his phone and sat in the quiet apartment, listening to the familiar sounds of the building settling and the distant traffic and Sophie's soft breathing from her bedroom. He'd wanted to prove people like Richard wrong. He'd wanted to show that someone from a small repair shop could build something real. He'd wanted justice for the 400 people Harrington had thrown away. But he hadn't wanted this. Revenge, it turned out, didn't feel as good as he'd imagined it would. The resumes started arriving 3 days after Harrington's bankruptcy filing. They came through email, through LinkedIn, hand-delivered to Westbrook's front desk by people desperate enough to drive across the city on the chance someone might actually read them. Liam hadn't expected the flood. 27 resumes the first day, 41 the second, more than 60 by the end of the week. Former Harrington employees, engineers with 15 years of experience, machinists who'd spent their entire careers learning precision work, quality inspectors who knew aerospace standards inside and out, all of them now competing for jobs that might not exist. Ray spread them across the conference table that Liam had finally bought because they kept having meetings with too many people and nowhere to sit. "We can't hire all of them," Ray said. "We don't have the capacity." "I know, but some of these people are really good. Martinez here." Ray tapped one resume. He was one of the best fabrication specialists Harrington had. And Chen, she ran their inspection department, trained half the people doing quality control in this region. Liam picked up Chen's resume. 22 years at Harrington Industries. Certifications in 6 different inspection methodologies. Glowing references from managers who'd probably also lost their jobs. How many can we actually take on? Without expanding? Maybe 5. 6 if we push it and run a 3rd shift. And if we expand? Ray looked at him. "You're thinking about adding another production line already?" "Atlas wants to talk about a long-term contract. Orion's hinting at increasing their trial order. We've got 3 other prospects in the pipeline. We're going to need more capacity regardless." Liam set down the resume. "Question is whether we do it now to help people who need jobs or wait until we're certain about the revenue." "The smart business move is to wait." "Yeah. But you're not going to wait, are you?" Liam thought about the message from Vanessa, about 1,000 people losing their jobs, about the weight of knowing that his success was built partly on someone else's failure. He thought about what it had felt like when Emily died and the world had kept spinning like nothing important had happened, like one person's tragedy didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Every one of these resumes was someone's tragedy, someone's disrupted life. "Set up interviews," he said. For anyone with relevant experience. We'll figure out how to make room. Ray smiled. You know Marcus is going to have opinions about expanding this fast. Marcus always has opinions. Doesn't mean I have to listen to all of them. They spent the next week interviewing. Some candidates were obviously desperate, willing to take any job at any pay. Others were cautious, burned once by corporate promises and not eager to trust again. A few were angry, treating the interview like a chance to vent about how Harrington had betrayed them. Liam listened to all of it, the desperation, the caution, the anger. He understood every variation because he'd felt them all at different points in his own life. Chen came in on a Wednesday morning wearing a suit that looked like it had been pulled from the back of her closet and pressed for the first time in months. She was 47, had the kind of quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly what she was good at, and answered technical questions with precision that impressed even Ray. Why do you want to work here? Liam asked, the question he'd asked everyone. Because I heard you actually care about the work. Chen folded her hands in her lap. At Harrington, toward the end, it was all about cutting costs and maximizing output. They wanted us to pass components that were borderline, to sign off on work that met minimum standards instead of optimal standards. I pushed back and they made it clear that kind of attitude wasn't welcome anymore. So you left? So I got reassigned to a role with no real authority and told to stop making trouble. She met his eyes. I heard you shut down a production line for 2 days last month because one batch of components didn't meet your specifications, even though they would have passed most industry standards. They weren't good enough. Exactly. That's why I want to work here. Liam hired her on the spot. Martinez came in the next day. He was 36, had the hands of someone who'd spent 20 years working with precision machinery and spoke about fabrication techniques the way other people spoke about art. I can make anything, he said simply. Give me specifications and the right equipment, and I'll produce components so accurate you'll think a machine made them. Machines do make them, Angela pointed out. She'd sat in on this interview because Martinez would be working directly under her supervision if they hired him. Machines execute, Martinez corrected. People create. The machine only does what it's told. I'm the one who knows how to tell it the right things. Angela looked at Liam and nodded. By the end of 2 weeks, Carter Industrial had hired 9 former Harrington employees, which meant they needed to expand capacity immediately, which meant Liam had to somehow finance a third production line with revenue that was solid but not guaranteed. Marcus came to Westbrook when Liam called to discuss the expansion. He walked the facility, looked at the production schedules, reviewed the financial projections, and then sat in Liam's office shaking his head. This is aggressive, like really aggressive. I know. You're betting on contracts that aren't signed yet. If Atlas or Orion delay, if any of these prospects fall through, you're going to be over-leveraged. I know that too. Marcus leaned back in his chair. So why are you doing it? Because 9 people need jobs, and I can provide those jobs if I'm willing to take the risk. That's not how business works, Liam. You can't hire people out of charity. It's not charity. They're qualified. They'll make the company better. I'm just accelerating the timeline to help people who got screwed over by circumstances they couldn't control. You mean circumstances you partially created by taking Harrington's clients? The words hung in the air between them. Liam had been avoiding that particular truth, but Marcus had a talent for saying the things other people were too polite to mention. Yeah, Liam admitted. Circumstances I partially created. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know what your problem is? You've got too much conscience for someone trying to run a competitive business. Is that actually a problem? In pure business terms? Absolutely. In human terms? Marcus smiled. Probably not. All right, I'll help you structure the financing for the expansion. But Liam, you need to start thinking bigger picture. Carter Industrial is growing faster than you planned. You're going to need real infrastructure, HR department, accounting team, operations managers. You can't keep running this place like it's still a repair shop. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, you're still trying to do everything yourself, reviewing every quality report, approving every production schedule, personally interviewing every new hire. Someone has to. No, you have to delegate. That's what leaders do. Marcus stood up. Hire good people and trust them to do their jobs. You're good at the technical stuff, but the technical stuff isn't going to be your biggest challenge anymore. Managing growth is. After Marcus left, Liam sat in his office staring at the whiteboard covered in production schedules and thought about what he'd said. Delegate. Trust other people. Let go of direct control over every detail. The advice made sense. It was probably necessary. It was also terrifying. The third production line got installed over 3 weeks in May. Liam maxed out the credit lines Marcus had helped him secure, hired 2 more machinists and an automation specialist, and worked 16-hour days making sure everything integrated properly with the existing systems. Sophie started complaining that she never saw him anymore. "I see you every day," Liam said one night when he'd gotten home late again and found her still awake reading in bed. "You see me for like 30 minutes at dinner, then you go back to work on your laptop." She wasn't wrong. The expansion had consumed every spare moment, every fragment of mental energy he had left after dealing with production issues and client calls and the 1,000 small decisions that came with running a growing company. "You're right. I'm sorry. Are you going to be like this forever?" The question hit harder than she probably meant it to. Was this what success looked like? Working constantly, barely seeing his daughter, sacrificing the quiet life they'd built together for something bigger and more demanding? "No," he said. "I'm going to figure out how to balance it better. I promise." "Okay, can we go to the park this weekend? Just us?" Absolutely. Saturday came and Liam kept his promise. They went to the park, just the 2 of them, and spent 3 hours doing nothing productive. They fed ducks, played on the swings, got ice cream from a truck that played music too loudly. Normal parent-kid stuff, the kind of stuff that didn't contribute to quarterly revenue or production efficiency, but mattered more than any of that. On the walk back to the truck, Sophie took his hand. "Dad? Yeah? I'm proud of you, for the factory and everything." Liam felt something tight in his chest. "Thanks, kiddo. But I like it better when you're not so busy." "Me too." When they got home, there was a car parked in front of the building that Liam recognized, the BMW that belonged to Vanessa Harrington. She was sitting on the steps leading up to his apartment, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of the expensive business clothes he'd always seen her in before. She stood when they approached. "I'm sorry for showing up like this. I tried calling, but you didn't answer." "Been at the park." Liam glanced at Sophie, who was watching Vanessa with open curiosity. "This is my daughter, Sophie. Sophie, this is Ms. Harrington. You can call me Vanessa." She crouched down to Sophie's eye level. "I like your rabbit." Sophie clutched the stuffed animal closer. "Thanks. His name is Mr. Hoppers." "That's a good name." Liam unlocked the door to his apartment. "Sophie, why don't you go upstairs and get started on your reading homework? I'll be up in a few minutes." Sophie nodded and disappeared inside. Liam stayed on the steps with Vanessa, waiting. "I wanted to thank you," Vanessa said, "for hiring people from Harrington. I've heard from at least 5 employees who got jobs at Carter Industrial, and they all said you treated them with more respect in one interview than they got in years working for me. They're good at what they do. Made sense to hire them." "Maybe, but you didn't have to expand your operation to make room for them. That was a choice." She sat back down on the steps, and after a moment Liam joined her. "The bankruptcy restructuring is almost complete. We're selling 3 facilities and laying off about 800 people total. The company will survive barely, but it's going to be a fraction of what it was." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We did this to ourselves." Vanessa looked out at the street, at the neighborhood that was worn but lived in, real in ways her world probably wasn't. "I spent 5 years thinking I was running my father's company the right way, hiring smart executives, optimizing operations, maximizing shareholder value. All the things they teach you in business school. But I never learned what my father actually understood, that manufacturing isn't about spreadsheets and quarterly reports. It's about people who show up every day and build things that matter. It's about quality and pride and giving a damn about the work." She turned to look at him. "You knew that. Even when you were running a small repair shop, you knew that." Liam thought about his dad, about the way he taught Liam to fix things properly instead of just making them work temporarily. About the philosophy that if something was worth doing, it was worth doing right. "My dad used to say that every repair was someone's problem, and treating it like it didn't matter was the same as treating them like they didn't matter. Your father was wise. He was a mechanic, but yeah, he was wise about the things that counted." They sat in silence for a moment. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car drove past playing music with bass that rattled windows. I'm going to step back from running Harrington, Vanessa said quietly. The board's bringing in a new CEO, someone with actual manufacturing experience, someone who knows how to build instead of just managing what already exists. What will you do? Figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be my father. She smiled, but it was fragile. Maybe learn what it actually takes to run a company before I try to run one again. You could work here, Liam said, surprising himself. Not in management or anything, just on the floor, learning the work. Vanessa looked at him like he'd suggested she take up skydiving. You're serious? You want to understand manufacturing? Come spend some time actually manufacturing things. Angela would probably love to boss around a former billionaire CEO. I don't know anything about operating machinery. That's kind of the point. You learn by doing. Liam stood up. Think about it. Offer stands if you want it. He started toward his apartment door, then turned back. Vanessa? What you said that day in my office about being scared of failing your father's legacy. I get that. I spent years after my wife died scared I was going to fail Sophie, that I wasn't enough by myself to be what she needed. But at some point, you have to stop trying to live up to someone else's expectations and figure out what you're actually capable of on your own. How do you do that? You make mistakes. You fail at things. You try anyway. He shrugged. There's no shortcut. You just have to do the work. Vanessa left a few minutes later. Liam went upstairs and found Sophie reading on the couch, Mr. Hoppers tucked under one arm. Was that the lady from the factory that closed? Sophie asked without looking up from her book. How'd you know that? I heard Ray talking about her once. He said she was the reason everyone lost their jobs. It's more complicated than that. Is she going to work at your factory now? Maybe, if she wants to learn. Sophie thought about this. Is she nice? I think she's trying to be. Sometimes it takes people a while to figure out how. Like Tyler Martinez at school. He used to be mean, but now he shares his crayons sometimes. Exactly like that. They spent the evening doing normal things. Sophie finished her homework, Liam made dinner, they watched a nature documentary about meerkats. Around 8:30, Sophie's eyes started getting heavy, and Liam carried her to bed, even though she insisted she wasn't tired. Dad? She mumbled as he tucked her in. Yeah? I like our life, even with the factory. Me too, kiddo. Just don't forget about the park days. I won't, promise. Vanessa showed up at Westbrook the following Monday morning, wearing work clothes that looked brand new and safety boots that had clearly never seen a factory floor. Angela took one look at her and grinned. Ray said you might be coming. Thought he was messing with me. I'm here to learn, Vanessa said. Whatever you think I should know. Whatever I think you should know. Angela's grin widened. All right then, let's start with basic machine operation. Hope you don't mind getting your hands dirty. Liam watched from the quality control station as Angela walked Vanessa through the fundamentals of operating a fabrication unit. Vanessa looked uncomfortable at first, uncertain in a way that probably wasn't familiar to her. But she listened carefully, asked questions when she didn't understand, and didn't complain when Angela made her repeat processes until she got them right. Ray came to stand beside Liam. Never thought I'd see the day Vanessa Harrington took orders from one of her former employees. People can change. Can they? Or do they just adapt when they don't have other options? Does it matter, as long as the end result is growth? Ray considered this. I guess not. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that felt almost sustainable. Production capacity increased with the third line fully operational. The Atlas contract moved from trial phase to long-term agreement. Orion doubled their order. 2 new clients signed contracts for specialty components that would keep the facility running at near capacity for the next year. Carter Industrial was no longer a startup. It was a real company with real revenue and real employees depending on its success. Liam hired an HR manager, a woman named Patricia, who'd spent 20 years in manufacturing and knew how to handle the complexities of labor regulations and benefits administration. He brought on an accounting team to manage the financial side of things. Because Marcus was right, he couldn't do everything himself anymore. Delegating felt wrong at first, like he was shirking responsibility. But slowly, he started to see that trusting other people to do their jobs wasn't weakness. It was the only way anything worked at scale. Vanessa kept coming to the factory 3 days a week. She worked alongside Angela learning fabrication, spent time with Ray understanding quality control, shadowed David to see how logistics coordination actually functioned. She didn't talk much about Harrington Industries or her past role there. Mostly she just worked, and gradually she got better at it. One afternoon in late June, Liam found her in the break room during lunch looking at her phone with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Everything okay?" She looked up. "Harrington's sale of the 3 facilities just went through. The company I spent 5 years running is now about 30% of what it was when my father died." "I'm sorry." "Are you?" She said it without hostility, just curiosity. "You took the clients that might have saved us. You hired the employees who could have helped us recover. You built exactly what I should have built when I had the chance." Liam sat down across from her. "I didn't build Carter Industrial to destroy Harrington. I built it because I saw potential that was being wasted and people who deserved better than what they were getting." "I know, but the effect is the same." Vanessa set down her phone. "The ironic thing is that I'm learning more about manufacturing working here for 3 days a week than I learned in 5 years running Harrington. Angela's teaching me things my executives never bothered to explain. Ray showed me why quality control actually matters beyond just checking boxes. Even David made me understand that logistics isn't just moving things from point A to point B, it's choreography." "So what are you going to do with that knowledge?" "I don't know yet. The new CEO at Harrington has his own team. He doesn't need me anymore, and honestly, the company's probably better off without me." She smiled, but it was more genuine than the fragile ones Liam had seen before. "Maybe I'll start something new. Something smaller, where I can actually understand what I'm building instead of just managing it from a distance." "That would be good. You've got potential, you just needed to learn how to use it." High praise from the man who proved I'd been doing everything wrong. "I didn't prove anything. You figured it out yourself. I just gave you a chance to see it differently." Vanessa went back to work after lunch, and Liam returned to his office where production reports and scheduling conflicts and contract negotiations waited. The work never really stopped, but it had become more manageable now that he wasn't trying to control every detail personally. Sophie's school year ended in mid-June, which meant she was home during the days and needed activities to keep her occupied. Liam enrolled her in a summer program that did art and science projects, but she still came to the factory a couple afternoons each week because she liked watching the machines and talking to the employees who always treated her like she was important. Ray let her help with visual inspections on components that didn't require precision instruments. Angela showed her how to read technical drawings. David taught her about inventory management, using a system simple enough for a 6-year-old to understand. "She's good with details," Angela told Liam one afternoon. "Noticed a surface irregularity I almost missed. She gets that from her mom. Emily was a graphic designer, had an eye for things being even slightly off. She'd be proud of what you've built here." Liam hoped that was true. He thought about Emily sometimes, about what she'd think of the life he and Sophie had now. The factory, the employees, the constant motion of building something that mattered. Emily had always understood his need to create, to fix, to make things better than they were. She'd probably tell him he was working too hard and forgetting to sleep enough, but she'd be proud anyway. The sign went up in late July on a Saturday morning when most of the facility was quiet. Liam had commissioned it weeks earlier, had gone back and forth on the design, had finally settled on something simple that said what needed to be said. Sophie stood next to him in the parking lot holding Mr. Hoppers and watching as the installation crew positioned the new sign above the main entrance. It was larger than the old one at the repair shop, but the aesthetic was similar: clean, professional, unpretentious. It just said, Carter. Nothing about industrial or manufacturing or any of the descriptors that tried to explain what the company did. Just the name, because the work would speak for itself. "That's our name," Sophie said. "It is." "Does that mean this place belongs to us?" "It means we built it together, me and you and all the people who work here." The crew finished securing the sign and gave Liam a thumbs up. He signed the completion paperwork and they drove away, leaving him and Sophie alone in the parking lot staring up at the name that represented everything they'd created. "Dad?" "Yeah? Are you done being so busy now?" Liam thought about the Atlas contract that needed renewal negotiation, about the Orion expansion talks scheduled for next week, about the 3 new client prospects Ray wanted him to meet with. The work would never really be done. There would always be another problem to solve, another decision to make, another challenge to face. But Marcus had been right about delegation. Patricia was handling HR issues competently. The accounting team managed finances without needing constant oversight. Ray and Angela and David had proven they could run daily operations without him micromanaging every detail. He could take weekends off. He could be home for dinner. He could remember that being Sophie's father was more important than being Carter Industrial's founder. "I'm going to try to be less busy," he said. "Can't promise I'll be perfect at it, but I'll try." "That's okay. You don't have to be perfect." They went for ice cream after, just the two of them, and spent the afternoon at the park watching ducks and talking about nothing particularly important. Normal life. The kind that didn't make headlines or impress investors but mattered more than any of that. Monday morning brought an email from Vanessa. She'd been accepted into a manufacturing management program at a technical college, would be starting in the fall, and wanted to thank him for the opportunity to work at Carter Industrial. "You showed me what I'd been missing," she wrote. "Not just the technical knowledge, but the why behind it all. Why people take pride in their work. Why quality matters beyond profit margins. Why leadership means understanding what you're asking people to do, not just demanding results." She'd be leaving Carter Industrial to focus on school, but she hoped they could stay in touch. Maybe collaborate someday when she actually knew what she was doing. Liam wrote back, wishing her luck and meaning it. Vanessa Harrington wasn't the same person who'd laughed when he'd walked into her factory 7 months ago. Neither was he, really. They'd both learned something about themselves in the process of everything falling apart and being rebuilt. Ray knocked on Liam's office door mid-morning. "Got someone here asking about employment. Says you told her to come by if she needed work." A woman in her late 30s came in behind him. Professional demeanor, tired eyes, resume in hand. Former Harrington Industries, laid off in the final round of cuts, skilled in production planning and workflow optimization. "We don't have any openings right now," Liam said honestly, "but we're growing. Might have something in a month or two." "I can wait a month or two. Can I wait longer if I have to?" She set the resume on his desk. "I just need to know there's a chance that someone's actually looking at what I can do instead of just checking boxes on a hiring form." Liam picked up the resume and read it carefully. 15 years of experience, strong references. Exactly the kind of expertise they'd need as the company continued expanding. "Give me your contact information. When we have an opening that fits your skills, I'll call you first." The relief in her expression was almost painful to watch. "Thank you, really, thank you." After she left, Ray said, "You're going to end up hiring half of Harrington's former workforce at this rate. Only the good ones. Still, that's a lot of people who lost jobs there and found them here. Is that a problem?" "No, just an observation." Ray leaned against the doorframe. "You know what this place is becoming? It's becoming what Westbrook should have been all along. What Harrington should have been. A place where the work matters and the people doing it matter. That was always the goal." "Yeah, but goals and reality don't always match up. This time, they did." Ray smiled. "Your dad would be proud of what you built." "Hope so." Ray left and Liam sat in his office looking out at the production floor where 29 people were building precision components that would go into satellites and aircraft and defense systems. Where Angela was training a new machinist with the same patience she'd shown Vanessa. Where David was optimizing a delivery schedule that would save the company 3% on shipping costs. Where people who'd lost everything were building something new. This was what mattered, not revenge against people who'd underestimated him, not proving he was smarter than executives with MBAs and corner offices. Just this, creating something real, providing jobs that meant something, building components that would last. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Don't forget parent-teacher conference tomorrow at 4. He'd forgotten, but he wouldn't miss it. He texted back a thumbs up and marked it on his calendar with a reminder 2 hours in advance. The conference the next day went well. Sophie's teacher said she was excelling in math, showed leadership during group projects, and had a particular talent for noticing details others missed. She asked thoughtful questions and helped classmates who were struggling without being asked. "She's a remarkable kid," the teacher said. "You're doing something right." Liam wanted to say that most of what Sophie was came from Emily, from the kindness and strength Emily had shown even when she was dying. But Sophie was also her own person. shaped by circumstances that weren't fair, but that she'd handled with more grace than most adults could manage. She's pretty great, he agreed. That evening, he took Sophie to the Vietnamese restaurant where Mrs. Nguyen made them banh mi and refused payment as usual. "Business good?" Mrs. Nguyen asked. "Business is good. I see the sign. Very nice. Very professional. Thanks. You come back more often now? Not so busy?" "I'll try." Mrs. Nguyen smiled and brought them extra spring rolls because that's what she did. Took care of people in small ways that didn't cost much but meant everything. 6 months later, Carter Industrial had 47 employees, contracts with 11 major clients, and a reputation in manufacturing circles as the place that produced the highest quality components in the region. The facility ran 3 shifts, produced everything from aerospace mounting brackets to precision medical device components, and maintained defect rates that made their competitors wonder what they were doing wrong. Liam still reviewed quality reports and approved major decisions, but he'd learned to trust his team to handle daily operations without constant oversight. He took weekends off most of the time, made it to Sophie's school events, remembered that life existed outside the factory walls. The repair shop building sat empty for a while before Liam finally decided what to do with it. He donated it to a nonprofit that taught trade skills to at-risk youth, with the condition that they keep some of his dad's old tools and use them to teach kids that working with your hands wasn't something to be ashamed of. Marcus came to visit one Saturday in early spring, almost exactly a year after Liam had bought Westbrook. They walked the production floor together, Marcus taking notes and asking questions about processes and efficiency metrics. "You know what you've built here is extraordinary, right?" Marcus said. "It's just a manufacturing facility. It's a manufacturing facility that's outperforming companies 10 times its size. It's a business that's grown from nothing to $7 million in annual revenue in 14 months. It's a place where people actually want to work because they know their effort matters." Marcus shook his head. "This is the kind of success story that business schools will study someday. Don't get carried away. I'm serious. You took a failed facility that everyone else had written off, hired people nobody else wanted, and built something that's changing how this region thinks about manufacturing." Marcus paused. "And you did it by just being yourself. No corporate posturing, no pretending to be something you're not. Just a guy who knows how to fix things and treats people with respect." Liam thought about that word, respect. It's what he'd wanted that day at Harrington Industries when Richard had made jokes and Vanessa had laughed. Not admiration or recognition, just respect. The acknowledgement that what he did mattered, that who he was had value beyond appearances. He'd earned it now, but the earning had taught him something important. Respect wasn't about making other people recognize your worth. It was about knowing your own worth, regardless of whether anyone else saw it. "I just did the work," Liam said. "Same as everyone here." Sophie turned 7 in late April. They had a party at the apartment with 6 of her school friends, and Liam made a cake that came out lopsided but tasted fine. The kids played games that were too loud and ate too much sugar and had the kind of chaotic fun that children were supposed to have. Angela and Ray came by at the end to drop off a present, a hard hat with Sophie's name on it, and Carter Industrial, future engineer printed on the back. Sophie put it on immediately. "Can I really be an engineer?" "You can be anything you want," Liam said. "Engineer, artist, teacher, astronaut, whatever makes you happy." "What if I want to work at the factory with you?" "Then you work at the factory with me. But you've got time to decide. No rush." After everyone left and Sophie was asleep, Liam sat on the couch in the quiet apartment and thought about the year that had passed, about everything that had changed and everything that had stayed the same. He'd built a successful company, created jobs for 47 people, proven that someone like him could compete with billion-dollar corporations. But the thing that mattered most was sleeping in the next room with Mr. Hoppers tucked under one arm and a hard hat on her nightstand. Everything else was just details. Vanessa graduated from the Technical College's manufacturing program in early June and sent Liam an invitation to the ceremony. He went, sat in the audience with hundreds of other families, and watched as she walked across the stage to receive her certificate. She'd earned top marks in her class, according to the program notes, and had a job offer from a mid-sized manufacturing firm that wanted to rebuild their quality control department. Afterward, she found him in the parking lot. "Thank you for coming." "Congratulations, you earned it." "I did, didn't I?" She smiled, and it was different from any smile he'd seen on her before. Genuine pride in something she'd accomplished through actual effort rather than inherited position. I start the new job in 2 weeks. It's not running a billion-dollar company, but it's honest work doing something I actually understand now. That's better than running a billion-dollar company you don't understand. Much better. She held out her hand. Thank you, Liam, for everything. For hiring my former employees when you didn't have to, for giving me a chance to learn what I should have known all along, for showing me what real leadership looks like. They shook hands, and Liam wished her well. She'd learned what she needed to learn, and now she'd build something with that knowledge. Maybe she'd fail again. Maybe she'd succeed, but at least she'd do it with her eyes open. The summer passed in a blur of production schedules and client meetings and park days with Sophie. Carter Industrial kept growing, kept improving, kept building things that mattered. The name above the factory entrance stayed simple, just Carter, because that said everything it needed to say. On a warm evening in late August, Liam stood in the Westbrook parking lot after everyone else had gone home and looked up at the building he'd bought when most people thought he was crazy. The building that had been abandoned and written off as worthless. The building that now housed one of the most successful manufacturing operations in the region. He thought about his dad, about Emily, about all the people who'd believed in him when he barely believed in himself. He thought about Sophie growing up in a world where she'd always know that her father had built something real, something that gave people work and purpose and pride. And he thought about that October morning 14 months ago when he'd walked into Harrington Industries in his worn work boots and frayed jacket and saved a production line that nobody else could fix. About the laugh that had stung, about Richard's condescension, about the moment he'd decided to stop being invisible. He'd wanted to prove them wrong, to show that a mechanic from a small repair shop could build something that mattered. But the truth was simpler than that. He'd always been more than what people saw. The work had always mattered. The skills had always been real. He just needed to remember it himself. Liam locked the facility and drove home to the apartment where Sophie was probably still awake even though it was past her bedtime. Tomorrow there would be production meetings and quality reviews and all the mundane challenges of running a successful company. But tonight he was just a dad going home to his daughter, and that was enough. It had always been enough.